Hey, how's it going? So today I wanted to talk about the top 5 mistakes I made when I started in the journey of non-duality. So here we go. The first mistake I made is that I took awareness to be something, like something I have to do, or I have to use a technique to get to awareness. But as I matured from all the teachings that I heard and over the years, and this actually takes time. At the beginning you keep mistaking awareness to be something, but eventually you realize it is not something. It is the background of all things. The more mature you get in this understanding, the more obvious it becomes that awareness is actually not something. It is what lights up all things. For example, right now you can hear my voice, you are aware of what's going on around your room, you can see me. If you look closely, you realize that your awareness is not changing. What you are aware of is changing. For example, the sound of my voice is changing, but your awareness of it is not changing. You are aware of my voice the same way that you were aware of my voice 5 minutes ago or 2 minutes ago, right? So this takes a little bit of maturing. At the beginning, we always take awareness to be a technique or something you have to do. But the more mature you become in that understanding, you realize that awareness is what I am already. I can't do it. I can't make it. I can't use a technique to it. That's why they say it's effortless, because you are already that. You can't be that, because you're already awareness. You're already your own being. That's why if I was to ask you, do you feel the sense of being, or do you feel like you're here? Anyone who understood the question, they would say, yes, undoubtedly I'm here. I feel alive. I'm right here, right? Where does this come from? It comes from awareness of itself. So it comes from being known by awareness. Your being, the fact that you're here, the fact that you can hear me, goes to show that you are aware of not only my voice but also of the being, right? So this was the first mistake I made. I took awareness to be something, and then slowly I realized, wait, it is not something, it is always here. It is what I am already. The second mistake I made is I thought you'd have to put some sort of an effort. This is probably what was the hardest for me personally, because growing up, anything I wanted to do or anything I wanted to achieve, I always had to put some sort of effort. I needed to do something. Whereas when it comes to non-duality, the doing something is what causes the issue. The doing something is what veils the fact that it is already here effortlessly, right? Now, what would be my advice? I would say when you sit down for meditation, at the beginning, if your mind is running too much, then you can calm it down just by focusing on your breathing. But eventually, you need to let that go as well. So it's almost like you can't shine your attention on any particular thing, because then you're putting an effort. That is an activity of the mind when you're paying attention to something. You have to just let go completely and realize that even when you are not paying attention to a particular thing, you're still here, effortlessly. To be, you don't need an effort. Like, because of our habits and stuff, your mind will definitely keep on putting effort, especially at the beginning. Don't get frustrated. This happens to everyone, because of the way we have been conditioned since we are kids, and because of the way we grew up. But don't worry about it. When your mind is grasping something, or when your mind is putting an effort, just notice it. If you try not to put effort, then you become a person again trying to not put any effort. So that's another loop of mind, So don't fight it. If you notice it, that okay, I'm trying to be aware right now, just notice that you are aware of that too. You know, all this game is just becoming more aware of the most subtle and more subtle and more subtle until, you know, you realize you're effortless, you're already here. I would recommend silent sitting the most. That has helped me the most. Like, you can listen to like 1,000 talks and you can read like 100 book, but if you don't sit silently and, you know, put those whatever you've learned into your practice, it's not going to become obvious for you. And when I say put it into practice, I don't mean you have to do something. It's just you have to see, is it true or not? Whatever I've learned from this book and whatever I've learned from that person, at that moment, intellectually, you understand it, you hear it. But when you sit down quietly, that's when the mind starts, throwing all these thoughts and everything at you. So for example, one of the things we hear is awareness is unchanging. So its nature is peace, right? So, but at the beginning, it's not so obvious to you. When you sit down, you get all these thoughts and you get agitated and all of that, and you grab onto that person who's being agitated and all of this. But the more you allow it and you realize that, wait, it is there, but it's not really touching me. I'm aware of it. The fact of just being aware is not affected, right? It's almost like space, if I do anything to space, nothing happens to space, you see? So it just depends where you're putting your identity. Are you putting it to being a person, or are you putting your identity where it truly belongs, which is just being? You already are. You're effortless, right? So the second mistake is putting in effort. Slowly you realize there's no effort required. It is already the case, and it is always, it's like, you can't even, how you turn a light switch on. You can't turn this on. Like, you can't all of a sudden become aware. You're already fully aware all the time, right? But the problem is, right now, you're still attaching awareness to something like the body or the mind, right? But slowly, what will happen, the more you sit down quietly and the more you realize that I'm already here. I don't need to merge awareness and the body, and I don't need to merge awareness and the mind, because awareness is just independent. It's like open space. This happens, you're aware. Something else happens, you are aware. What is the common scenario in all experience? You are aware. What do you have to do to be that? Nothing. You're already that effortlessly. That's already the case. So that was the second mistake. So the third mistake I made is I created this separation in between being aware and activities. So I thought, I couldn't do both of them. And even when I understood that I am awareness, there would still be, I understood and I felt that I am awareness. There would still be times when I'm doing an activity or I'm doing something and I sort of forget, right? Forget that I'm awareness, and then all of a sudden I realize, I'm lost in experience, and then I come back to awareness. So there's always this back and forth, right? Therefore, I always thought you could only be when, you're just sitting down, or you could only be awareness when you're not doing any activities, right? But that's not the case. At the beginning, it does seem like it's the case. So at the beginning, when you sit down, you meditate, and you realize your peaceful nature, right? So when you're in meditation, you're peaceful, you're calm, but when you go and touch any activities, then, all of a sudden you lose that, right? At the beginning, what happens is you feel like you need to maintain being aware, or you need to maintain your being when you're doing an activity, right? That's the beginning stages. But the more you notice being, then especially the more you sit down quietly, the more obvious it becomes that awareness is not something you need to maintain. Being is not something you need to maintain. Like, are you not yourself throughout the whole day? Yes, you are. But that I am, you're still attaching to, a technique or doing something to be I am. No, you don't need to do that. You just need to notice you already are throughout your whole day, right? And this is very hard to explain when it comes to words, but think of it as the best analogy I've heard is the screen and the movie analogy. So there's a good story I heard from Rupert, who's my favorite teacher that I've followed over the last few years, is two boys watching a screen. So mom comes in and asks the boys, hey, what are you watching? One of them said, I'm watching the screen. And the other one said, I'm watching the movie. Now, are they really watching two different things? No, they're not, right? But they don't know that they're not. So what does the mom do? She turns the TV off and asks the same question again to the boys. And she asks, what are you watching? So this time they both say, I'm watching the screen, right? But when the question was asked previously, it was still true that they both were watching the screen, but one was so involved, so interested in the movie that the boy forgot that he's watching the screen all the time, right? So what did the mom do? She turned off the TV. When you turn off the drama, this is why silent sitting or meditation is sort of important, even though some people say, oh, there's nothing needed and all of this. But for someone who is completely involved, completely, completely lost in the movie, you need to turn the screen off so that you realize, wait, the screen is always there. Even when I'm watching the movie, I'm still watching the screen first, right? The next step is mom turns the TV back on, right? Now both of them are watching the movie, but both of them are still aware that they're watching the screen, right? And the movie is just, it's just a movement of the screen. It's not. Can you separate the movie from the screen? You cannot, right? I mean, the screen can remain independent of the movie. When you turn the movie off, the screen is there, right? It's always there, right? But when the movie is on, right, it's not like the screen disappears, right? So link this to your experience. When you have experience, it's not like the screen of awareness or this open space disappears. It's still there. It's just you're so focused, your attention is so focused in a particular activity or in the movie that you forget that even when you're watching the movie, you're looking at the screen. You forget that, right? But it becomes, obviously I told you, it becomes more obvious the more you see it in your experience, right? Now, for me personally, what has helped the most is just sitting down every single day. If you love anything in your life, you sort of practice it, right? Or if you want to get good at something, you practice it, right? Well, you can't practice being aware or being in general, right? You can't practice that. But what you can practice is the way you see, the way you see thoughts, the way you see activities, the way you see sensation, that you can change, right? Because that, it's fine that you realize, okay, I am unlimited awareness, I am being, and I'm always here. But when it comes to activities, you can't create separation because there is truly no separation in between the screen and the movie. They're the same thing. They're one. There's no two things happening there, even though it seems as if there's two things happening, right? But the more you sit down and the more you practice in your own meditation, just being and also allowing activities to come and allowing thoughts and experiences to flow, the more you realize even when there's thoughts and there's sensations and many things going on, I'm still unharmed or I'm still untouched, right? And this translates, the more you sit down silently and realize this translates to your world as well. When you do an activity, you still remember that you're watching the screen. So you still remember that whatever you touch, whatever you're doing, you are aware. You never forget that, right? But does this take some time? Yes, for sure. I would say be patient with it. Don't be in sort of like a race or I need to get this, or don't force it. You can't force it because there is a natural unfolding that takes place. The best you can do is just to be more often, to be honest, your awareness you can never forget yourself, because you are knowing. So the fact that you're knowing, you're always knowing yourself effortlessly. Just like the sun, lights itself up effortlessly. All right, so let's quickly summarize the 3 mistakes that I made in my journey. So one of them, I thought awareness was something, and slowly I realized it is nothing. Second one, I thought, you need to do something. You need to put some sort of effort, and then realize there's no effort needed. It is effortless. It is what you are already. The third one is, I thought that you can't be yourself or be awareness and have activities at the same time. You can completely. And by the analogy of the screen and the movie, you should be able to understand this very clearly. If you were to take one thing away from this whole video, is sit down silently. This is where all of these things you hear becomes real. This is your playground, your lab, where you test it. Whatever you heard over here, you sit down and you see, is it really true for me? And that's the only way your doubts are going to be removed. You might understand it theoretically, but experience is key. Right? Thanks for watching this. I'll see you soon.